Welcome to the Alive and Kicking podcast. I'm your host, Kay Eck, and this is where we talk to ordinary people about their extraordinary lives. Welcome back to the Alive and Kicking podcast, everybody. For those of you who are watching either on the website or on YouTube, you can see that my guest and I, BakeR, Gendron.
You say it really good.
Gendron. Are here in the studio together in Arizona. So that's kind of new for us. And I'm delighted to have you here with me.
I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you for agreeing to be my guest, our guest. So you and I became acquainted because you manage a healing center here in Sedona. And it was one of those synchronistic meetings that happen all the time for us when we're really paying attention.
Right.
And so we just kind of became fast friends and have been through some interesting experiences together already, even though we haven't known each other that long. Maybe we'll go into that later.
Yes.
But so welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today. So your history is so interesting to me because it kind of is, to me, an example of what a life without limits is kind of like, when you're not limiting yourself by some sort of external definition. And so let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your childhood. You're a Midwestern girl like me.
Yes. Yes. I grew up in a very small town in Southwest Michigan, pretty redneck, about 1,700 people. There was a paper mill that, spewed ugly fumes all day and put ugly garbage in the rivers. And most of the people in the town worked in the paper mill. That was sort of what you were going to do when you grew up, was work in the paper mill. It was just it was a pretty nasty place to grow up. And I have no idea where I got, let me rephrase that. My mother was very ambitious, and my mother did teach me that you can do anything you want to do. She instilled that in me, that you can do anything. So she always wanted to be educated, and she always gave us that. And I was the smart one. I'm the middle child. I'm the only girl. I have two brothers. And she always gave me that because she always wanted that. She had wanted to go to college, and she wanted to do all that. She didn't, but she really instilled that in me. So there was that hope, like she gave me that hope, but most of the people in that small town didn't have it. You were going to stay there, you were going to live there, you're going to have kids, you were going to have a family, that kind of thing. That was it. But I always had this little radical sense of, I don't have to stay here. There's got to be more out there. This can't be all there is. So, yeah.
I think it's almost more painful to grow up being aware of that, living in a small town where a lot of people don't have that desire or that need or the knowing that there might be something else. They're comfortable in their lane, and that's where they're going. So was that something that informed you as a young child?
Informed me?
Well, like informed who you became.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would also say that I was always a voracious reader. So, and I was reading when I was probably 3.5, 4 years old. I was already reading. And I read everything I could get my hands on. When I was probably 8 or 9, I asked for the World Book Encyclopedias. That's what I wanted for Christmas. And so they got me like the whole set. But anyway, I just knew that there was this whole world out there, that didn't exist where I was. And this was a time when girls were still very limited. So we couldn't even wear pants to school. we couldn't forget jeans, pants, regular pants. It's 35 below zero. You're waiting for a bus in a skirt. And I mean, you couldn't wear pants under your skirt. Ridiculous. And I remember once on the playground. Now, I grew up out in the country with all boys. So I had learned to be pretty tough. And this kid jumped off the monkey bars on my back and knocks me to the ground. And I flip him over and I'm beating the crap out of him. And this teacher runs over, little girls don't do that. And I remember thinking, well, why is it okay for him to beat me up? But I'm supposed to, and there was this, so that's when I became a feminist, was second grade. I remember having this sense of like, what is that about? Like it's okay for him to knock me over into the dirt, but I'm supposed to be, this sweet little thing now and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where you're going with that.
Yeah.
I think I got off track, but
no, but I love that because it's like, you're already challenging gender expectations.
Exactly. I always had that sense of I just never got that whole thing about like, I'm supposed to be this sweet little girl who's supposed to do these things. And again, remember, I had a very ambitious mother who really, that was a really great gift she gave me, was that I could do and be anything I wanted.
Yeah.
She didn't have any of that, like, I can't do that. If she saw something she wanted to do, she put together an organ, a whole organ. She worked at Heath Company and they had those kits, those great big kits that you can make things. She made an organ.
Wow.
So, play the organ kind of thing, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It sounds like she wasn't like the type of person who was resentful of what she wasn't able to do.
No, she just would go do it.
She just would go do it. Right.
So
what was your father like that was like?
So my father was not real educated. He worked as a laborer at a place called Auto Specialties that made brakes and car parts. Michigan is, very car centric. Everything's about cars. He was a master mechanic. He could take apart any engine and put it back together. And he was a very wounded, very, very wounded man. He had been horrifically abused by his father. I found out much, much later in my life. As a result, was very abusive to my brothers, beat them severely, sexually abused me. But I didn't remember any of that until I was almost 40 years old. I didn't remember the part about me. I knew about my brothers. I remembered that. But then on the outside, he would do anything for anybody. So he was very beloved in town because he would help, the neighbors would come and they needed help with a car, or they needed help with, he would go do that. He was always helping people with their cars. So they didn't see that, and even in our family, my parents were the best of the cousin. My mom had 3 brothers and sisters. My grandparents were migrant workers on my mother's side. I never knew my father's parents. So, but they were all from Arkansas, and they were all poor and uneducated. And so everyone escaped to Michigan to work in the factories because that was a much better life.
Wow. Yeah. So that character of your father, was it that he was hiding his true self from the people on the outside, or was that just a reflection of his conflicted character? Like, did those two aspects live in him both as true in some way?
I would say he was hiding that. And actually, years later, I worked with one of my mentors who's a psychic down in Phoenix. And he came in and talked to us. He also died when I was 16.
Mm.
So, there's a whole lot to this story. I mean, we could spend hours on my dad. But he came back, he came to me and, was just sobbing and apologizing and for what he had done to me. But I often wonder if he even knew what he was doing.
Mm.
And and I've done years of therapy around all this. So there is a point, I think, that my therapist told me where they actually don't even see you as their daughter.
Mm.
Right? You're like, I forget how she described it, a subject, you're just like a thing. That doesn't even exist. And when I finally told my mother about all this, she said, but your father adored you. She didn't doubt me, but she just said, your father adored you. And I said, yes, he did. So there was that whole,
yeah. Wow. And
crazy.
So confusing. I mean, it's so you basically put this package outside of your awareness for a long time. You went to high school, you survived high school, and then you went to college. What happened?
I didn't go to college.
Oh, you did not go
to college. I went very briefly to college.
Okay.
It was never my thing.
Never your thing. So what did you do then?
I got married young, 21. That was awful. Lasted for 2 years. Got divorced.
What compelled you to get married?
I think I got married because everybody else was getting married. And I knew it was the wrong thing to do. I knew the day it was a church with a basement where I got ready in the basement. And I'm walking up the stairs, to go walk down the aisle. And my stepfather was with me, who I adored, by the way. Wonderful gift. And I remember thinking, what the hell am I doing? Just like, oh my God, this is a huge mistake. But I'm in the dress and the church is full. And by the way, this was my mother's wedding. This was the wedding my mother always wanted, that my mother never had, right? Because, she got married pretty young and they were all poor. So they just had this little, bought some flowers, went to a judge, probably, I don't know. So this was my mother's wedding. 250 people, the whole thing. I wanted 50 people at the beach, yeah. So anyway, I felt like I was stuck. I could not walk out.
Yeah. So you stayed in Michigan then?
Yeah.
Which is what you said you wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So you were not doing what you wanted to do, and you were marrying somebody, tying yourself to Michigan and that stuff. Yeah. So that ended in divorce after a couple of years. Yeah. And how did your family take that?
The divorce? Mm-hmm. My mom really thought he was a good guy. Everybody thought he was a good guy because, again, he looked like a really good guy. He would work double shifts all the time. He was all about money. I'm 21 years old. We're already not having sex. I'm 21, right? Like what? Gosh, we're really talking about some deep stuff here. He had what's called a Madonna whore complex. Have you ever heard of that? Mm-hmm. So before you get married, you're the whore. So anything goes. As soon as you get married, you're the Madonna. Oh, by the way, I also said I never want children. We aren't married 2 months, and he's going, when are we going to have kids? Mm-hmm. I'm like, what part of this did you not understand? I never, ever wanted kids. I was very clear I didn't want kids. I just knew I didn't want kids. And I was just dumbfounded. Like, I was so clear about this. There was no doubt that I talked to you about this very clearly. And he's just constantly like, when are you going to go off birth control? We're going to have kids, blah, blah, blah. So that's a huge deal breaker right there. But we're not having sex, so that's kind of hard. Because if I'm not going to have kids, he's not going to have sex.
Oh. Was this religiously motivated
No.
or just
No, not at all.
was this way of
It's you're the Madonna. So your sole purpose is to have my children. And that's and then anyway, that's a whole another, you could again spend hours on that. So and then I thought, and his mother hated me. It was the typical how his father was a jewel. We got along great, but his mother absolutely detested me. We had to go there every Sunday for dinner. It was just, you name it, it was horrible. So he got a job offer in Chicago. And I thought, well, maybe if we go to Chicago, we'll get away from them and maybe things will get better. So we moved, he took the job, we went to Chicago, and of course that was worse because now I have no support system and none of my friends. My family is back in Michigan too. Now I'm really lost and I'm crying myself to sleep every night. I mean, it's horrible. I just have nothing. So he says, well, join the country club, because he's this rising star, right? In the whatever corporate thing he was in, and join the country club. So I joined the country club.
That's shocking. I can't picture you in the country club.
Right? Because I don't belong in the country club. The women are starting on martinis at 10 a.m. First you go play tennis, then you come in to have lunch 10:30, 11, whatever it was. They're drinking, and I mean drinking, and I've never been a drinker. And we're in St. Charles, Illinois. I don't know if you know St. Charles.
Yes, well.
Very nice place, right? On the river.
We have a lot of listeners in St. Charles.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
So we have a house on, is it the Fox River? Fox River, all of stuff. If you're in the country club, I hope I'm not offending you, but anyway, whatever that thing was called. Oh my God.
This is a lot to happen in the course of 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and I want to circle back to that, your desire not to have children, because, that could have very easily, you could have given in on that just to keep the peace or to, fulfill some obligation. So what was it about that decision for you that you felt so resolute in?
I can't even explain it. I just always knew I was not going to have kids. Now, by the way, I love kids. I love your kids. I love anybody else's kids. You see me at a party, if there's kids, I'm hanging out with the kids. I would much rather be with kids. But 24/7, that responsibility, have no desire. Part of it, I always say it's because you have to cook, you have to make them 3 meals a day because I don't cook. I can't even imagine.
Oh, it's hard.
I can't imagine. How do you even do that?
It's very hard. I think that's why I only eat really 1 meal a day anymore, because it's just too much.
I mean, the idea of that, I'm a really good person in emergency. Like if you have a vertigo experience and I have to take you to the hospital, I'm going to be great. But once you're done with that, if you needed long-term nursing, I'm not a great nurse.
Okay.
So I'm, to take care of a child who's sick for like a week or two, or, throwing up all the time. Oh my God, that whole thing. And I used to babysit, and I was a great babysitter. I mean, I enjoyed that, but I don't know. I just knew. I was so clear that I just didn't want kids.
That was not in your path. Okay, so I can imagine at 23, it's very difficult to go through a divorce. Like
in 1970, what was that? 23. So that was 73.
Yeah. So did you feel like a failure?
No, I did not. Here's what happened. He was also, I think he's I think he was very mentally imbalanced. Every time I would try to leave, I tried to leave a few times, he would try to commit suicide. He would do some kind of crazy thing. And then he started accusing me of having affairs. I mean, I go to the grocery store, I'd come home with 6 bags of groceries and he'd say, where have you been? And I'm like, I've gone an hour. What do you mean, where have I been? It was just insanity. He was working 16 hours a day. So anyway, long story short, I said, I want to go home. My friend was getting married. I want to go home for this wedding. And he said, I can't, I have to work, but we'll go home next weekend, I promise. I said, I'm going to this wedding. So I went home and I saw an old boyfriend at the wedding. And I slept with him. Because all of a sudden I realized this is the only way I'm going to be able to leave. So I came back, drove back to Chicago. I walk in the door and he said, you went out on me. And I said, yes, I did. And he went upstairs and started throwing all my clothes down the thing. And that was it. And so I left and then it's so crazy. It's unbelievable. But I'll just tell you the end. I come up there to get all my stuff, my furniture at the end. And he walks out and he says, if you'll just come back, you can screw anybody you want.
Okay.
Yeah. And I only did that because I knew that would be the final break, right? I knew that would be what would do it. So, but that's how imbalanced he was. Now, here's the shocking end to the whole thing is that during the then divorce process, at one point I had asked him if things got a little more amicable. He had gotten an apartment or whatever. And I said, there was a really great concert in Chicago. So I said, can I come up for the weekend and go to this concert? He said, oh, sure. I come up and there's women's clothes in the closet. And I said, and I knew, I kind of had this suspicion he was dating this secretary from work, but he would always say no. Well, she was living with him. Not only was she living with him, but then I find out she's 6 months pregnant. And 2 weeks after the divorce was final, they were married.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. You should always pay attention when someone's accusing you of cheating.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened then?
So then I moved back to Michigan for about a year. And I knew I was leaving. Wait, the story of the divorce. So you asked if it was hard to get a divorce. Yes, very hard to get a divorce in 1974, 3, whatever that was. The night before the divorce was going to be final, I'm living in Michigan. I had dated this guy on and off. And at one point he had given me a hickey on my neck. So the next time I was at his place, he falls asleep, I give him one, right? Ha ha. He shows up at my house that night with a friend. They're drinking. I don't even think anything of it. I let them in. This part I blacked out too. The two of them beat me up really badly, raped me with a gun. They had a gun too. I forgot the whole rape part. Anyway, I mean, they literally bit through my neck. They just did horrific things to me. I get up the next morning. I don't see any of this. I get ready. I go meet my attorney. I walk into his office. I remember he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, let's go get the divorce done, right? And he had already coached me on, we're going to go to court and they're going to ask you all these questions because it's very difficult back then. And so he had put me through all that. We go to the courthouse, we get on the elevator. And at that time, I knew a lot of the cops in town because I used to manage a Howard Johnson's, and they would come and use rooms to meet with their, what do you call those people? Informants, thank you. So one of the narcs gets on the elevator and he does the same thing. He's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting my divorce finalized today." I literally have absolutely no cognizance of this, any of this that's happened to me. I have bite marks on my neck. So they're all just, I mean, the narc, that he was a pretty good friend of mine, he turns white. He's just looking at me. And I'm looking at it, and I'm sort of like, what's wrong with all these guys? They're acting so weird. So we go to court. The judge asked me 2 questions. They must have all thought my husband had done this. So he asked like 2 questions, done, divorce final, out the door. So I go, my friend, we were ready to go celebrate afterwards. By the way, she had been my roommate up until that afternoon, the day before. She had moved out because she was going to go stay at her parents' place for a while to help them out. And she gets in the car and she says, "You." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she takes the mirror and just goes like this, "Look at yourself." And that's when I finally recognized it. But even then, I only thought they had done this. I still didn't remember the rape because I never remembered the rape until I remembered what my dad had done. So that was until I was, like I said, almost 40. Mm-hmm. So our minds are so good.
Yeah.
We just can bury all that.
Yeah, I just had another guest who had a similar experience where she was in a situation where she blacked out, thought she had been raped, but that was enough to trigger her memories that she had completely forgotten about. It was just like the understanding. So yeah, the mind is like, I mean, that's a protection mechanism.
Absolutely.
Protecting you from something that's too much. Yeah, we're just talking about your life and how it's unfolded and the mysteries of the mind. And so we're going to talk about, you know, how this all came to light for you, but what do we need to know between that time and you're 40 when this happens?
Okay, so then after that same year, that was in February. So I think it was September, I sold everything I owned, bought a van, packed up everything, everything I wanted to take with my little black cat, and hit the road for California. It was my mother standing at the end of the driveway. "You can't go cross country by yourself." "Yes, I can. Bye." And left. I knew I was done. I was so done, because I was still back in that little town. And I knew there was more. I knew there was something out there that was bigger, better. I wanted people like me. I wanted people that thought about things, that experienced things at a deeper level. I didn't even know what that meant. Like, I wouldn't have said the word deeper. I wouldn't have known that's what I meant. But I had gone to school enough, and I was self-educated enough. Remember, I still would read everything I could get my hands on. I had read, I bet you, honest to God, I swear to you, probably 2/3 of the books in the library in that small town, because it was a very limited library, obviously. And I would read my world books, so I was hungry for knowledge. I was hungry for people that wanted to know things, that wanted to talk about things, that wanted to, live that. And I wanted diversity too. I wanted to know, I knew there was this whole world out there. I wanted to meet someone from Australia or England or wherever. Didn't matter, just somewhere. And part of that was going to Chicago, because I'd go to Chicago a lot. We'd go to the airport and we'd just sit in the airport and we'd watch people come off the planes. I spent a lot of time in Chicago. Anytime I could, I'd go there. So I would see that. The first time I went to a deli in Chicago, I remember feeling like I was home.
Oh, I had that same experience. Yeah, or just like feeling like, wow, I've been missing a lot right now.
Exactly.
Like a really good Jewish or Italian deli.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first time I went to a Jewish deli, kreplach soup, matzo ball. I mean, just yeah. So I knew there were these people out there, you know, other people that had ideas, and even if they didn't believe the same way I did, I didn't care. I just wanted to know them. I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to explore that. So that's what happened. And so California was it, right? California was going to be that. So I left, but friends of mine had landed in Arizona and had partied in Arizona. I was also pretty much, I loved psychedelics. I liked drugs a lot. Fortunately, I never liked cocaine because I would probably be dead. But they had been in Phoenix, and so they had told me great drugs in Phoenix. So I had to come to Phoenix. So I landed in Phoenix November 18th, 1976. I was barefoot. It was 85 degrees. I jumped out of my van and I landed on a cactus thorn. And the first thing that went through my head was, I am home. And I remember just like, because I fell in love with the desert instantly. Yeah, it was, I just remember feeling like, and about 2 days later, my van broke down and I didn't have the money to get it fixed because I left with practically nothing. And I was too proud to call my mom and say, send me money, even though I'd love some back there. But anyway, so I eventually got a job. And then I stayed there about a year. I eventually moved to California. My best friend was now living out there. So I moved to California. I cried every single day. It was, you know, the clouds, I mean, the fog didn't roll out until 2:00 in the afternoon. I was so miserable. I absolutely detested California. I lasted a week and I moved back to Phoenix, and I lived down there for 30 years. So Scottsdale mostly.
I had that experience in California recently. I was there for like a week and a half, different locations. And I was like, yeah, it's beautiful, but not till 2:00. You know,
exactly.
Like, and if you're a morning person, like that's a long part of the day to be in that heavy, foggy, chilly. Yeah, I agree with you.
Not me.
I feel like in Arizona, it's sunny even when it's cloudy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
Okay, so what was your life like in Phoenix?
Oh, that was interesting because so I got a job working at a place called Under 3 in downtown Phoenix. So no one would hire me because I came here in November. And back then there was really the concept that you were a snowbird. So anyone coming in the winter, they believed you were just going to work a few months and then leave. So no one would hire me. I mean, I hit the pavement. That was my job. Every day I hit the pavement, and work was a lot tighter then. And I mean, I was running hotels back in Michigan. They had promoted me to like kind of like a general manager. I was over 3 Howard Johnsons in Michigan City and St. Joseph, two down in the Michigan City area, and then one in so. And I was like 20 years old, and they had already promoted me to that because I loved it. I loved the hotel industry. And I was really, really good with accounting and math. So I was just, you know, but no one, I mean, you could set me down in accounting, I could do any accounting. So finally, I got this job at this bar and restaurant. And it was judges, lawyers, business people. It was right downtown Phoenix. bankers, all that. And it was the place to go, one of the places to go. They also had a Playboy club, and it was the 70s. It was all that wild, lots of liquor, cigarettes, everybody smoked all day long, cigars, all that. We had to wear, now you heard me say I was a feminist in second grade. We had to wear an outfit that looked kind of like a bunny outfit. Little short, like panty kind of things with a halter top and a skirt. I can't even believe I did it. But I by then I was down to somebody had stolen my last $20. They broke into my little studio apartment. I loved Phoenix so much, you couldn't have thrown me out with anything. And I would have done anything, right? Plus, it was actually a fabulous job. Other than that, the very first night, some guy tries to grab me, and I just backed up and made it very clear that I wasn't there for that. And no one bothered me after that. I never had another, maybe once, but pretty much I just set my boundaries.
So how did your feminism work or feminist work start to become a more central part of your life?
In 1979, I had a wonderful partner that I was living with. I had just had a complete hysterectomy, and I was home recovering, and there was something in the newspaper about this march that was going to happen. I was always talking feminism. During high school, and then the little bit of college that I went to, let me back up a little bit. Where I grew up, this small town, we started to do there were a few of us that were doing some like civil rights stuff in high school, peace marches, sit-ins in the halls and stuff like that, because the Vietnam War was going on. And then the civil rights movement was just beginning to start to happen. Benton Harbor, Michigan, there were race riots happening. So we were right on the outskirts of that. That's about 15 miles away, maybe. And they were burning stores and burning things in Benton Harbor. So that was kind of a fearful time. We didn't know how far that was going to go. But I really supported them. I wasn't sure about the whole burning things, but I knew that justice had to happen. And again, I don't know where I got that, because my parents were from Arkansas, where, it was still very segregated. So, okay, fast forward now, but I had always had this feminist, and then I just was like this natural little feminist, like girls' rights. So there was, now back in 1979, there was this article in the newspaper about the National Organization for Women was going to do a rally and march at the Mormon Temple in Mesa. And my guy at the time said, you should go to this thing. You're always talking about women's rights, and, why don't you go? And I was like, okay, I think I will. So I just went. I didn't know any of these people, and I went, and that was it. I was hooked. And yeah, I dove right in, and within 6 months, I was doing it 24/7, and I was the president of Phoenix Now. I was the state coordinator. I ran for the national board. I literally did it 24/7 for 10 years after that. Politics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Women's rights.
Women's rights. Yeah.
Women's movement. Yeah.
So that took you, were you doing that work when you were 40, around the time when you
Yes.
had this experience? So at this time in your life, were you having what you would consider to be spiritual experiences?
No.
Nothing.
Mm-mm.
Just living the life, chugging along.
Yep.
Okay. So what, did you end up staying with the guy that you were with?
No. No. Oh, what happened? Oh, you can ask me that question. Okay. Well, I got into the National Organization for Women, and one night this woman drove up on this Harley Davidson, and she was the most gorgeous thing I think I'd ever seen in my life. She was this little tiny, beautiful Italian woman, long black hair, didn't look like anything you'd expect to see on a Harley Davidson at all. And she walked in the room, and I just was like, whoa, what is that? And why am I feeling like this? You don't know this part.
No.
So she came in and sat down, and I just remember being mesmerized. Anyway, after the meeting, she came over to talk to me, and we started talking to each other after these meetings. And she was married at the time. She was living with him. I was living with him. And anyway, we began an affair. And she left her husband. I left him. We never lived together, but and that the poor guy that I was currently that I was living with, his wife had left him for a woman.
Oh, that's a shame.
Yeah. By the way, he was an absolutely wonderful man. Yeah, I would probably still be with him if I hadn't. He really was. He was a great guy. But oh well. And she was not the love of my life. It was definitely, it was a great experience. She was a great person, but she did not have, it just wasn't the whole package. I still know her, and, we see each other on Facebook kind of thing. I was then with women for the next 20 years or so, whatever that was. And men, women, doesn't matter. The only thing that's different is the equipment. That relationships are relationships. I never knew I was going to go in that direction. Had no idea. So that was a real surprise to me, but it was great. And then,
there must have been just something in your makeup that opens you up to lots of different experiences, because like for that not to throw you into any kind of turmoil, and you're just like, yeah, okay, I'm doing this now, like let's go for it.
I didn't have any. Yeah, it was really interesting to me because I didn't have any fear about it. I never worried about my family accepting me. But remember, I had also been doing, that was pretty early on in NOW. Yeah, because I wasn't a leader at that point. But it was so funny. I didn't have any worry that my family wasn't going to accept me, and I have no idea why I didn't. I had a little bit of trepidation about it, but I didn't have a big, huge like, my mother's never going to speak to me again. In fact, when I told my mother, it was hysterical. She goes, I knew you'd have to try that. You just have to try everything.
Yeah, she saw you kind of the same way I do.
I said,
of course.
Well, Mom, I don't think it's just a trial, but okay, whatever, I knew you'd have to try that.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway, yeah, so that was a long line. For me, I really think that a big part of it was the fear of men and the abuse that I had from men, from my father, raped by those two guys. My very first sexual experience with a male outside of my dad was date rape. I never realized that until, I started doing all the therapy around the whole thing. So there was a lot with men.
Yeah. So the absence of that must have felt wonderful, like no threat to your safety, just understanding and
exactly.
Yeah. Wow. That would be a potent formula.
It was huge.
Yeah.
Really
so let's move to this period of your life when you were 40 and you had this awareness of what had happened to you?
So my partner at the time, woman, who was the other love of my life, besides my husband now, got lung cancer. And she was dying. And all of a sudden I started having flashbacks. I was in therapy because I was in therapy dealing with, her dying. I don't know if you've ever been through cancer with anybody, but it's a horrible roller coaster. You have. So, and I was a brand new realtor. We're trying to pay it was just, everything. I started having flashbacks, and the first flashbacks that I had was, let's see, I think I remembered the guys first. And so my therapist had me reading Courage to Heal, which is a great book about anyone that's been raped or sexually abused. And when I was reading the book, I kept hearing, your father. And I would be like, what? And so I called my therapist one day and I said, are you having me read this book because you think my father sexually abused me? And she said, no, but what makes you think that, right? So I was like, okay, fine. And she said, we'll talk at your next session. So anyway, it just started coming out. And just all the memories came, and and at first you think you're going crazy, like, oh, I'm making this up, or this can't be, and then there's just too many things that.
Yeah. Thank God you were in therapy at the time, so there was a container to hold all of this. Because I think a lot of people who do go through this aren't.
Yeah.
And they are, suddenly swimming in this trauma.
Yeah.
They're revisiting the trauma. So what was your process like then?
10 years of therapy. Every imaginable psychodrama, breath work, you name it, I did it. Because remember I said my dad adored me, I adored him. When he died when I was 16. I thought I had killed him, but I never understood why I thought I killed him. I just had this thing like I killed him, and then I would be like, why do I think I killed my dad? Well, now I know why, after the memories all came, because somewhere I hated him. Mm. So it was so twisted. But I didn't know, right? There was just this like really weird, crazy dichotomy of like, what? Why do I think I killed my dad? It was crazy. When he died, I went nuts. It was 3 days before Christmas. We were on a Christmas break. I lost it completely at the funeral, just completely lost it. And really, really strange thing. He had never in his life bought us Christmas presents, like mom would, mom always bought the presents, all that. So finally, I don't know what day it was, we finally opened the presents because they didn't have the funeral till after Christmas. So every night we'd go up there and sit. And anyway.
Is this the process that opened you up to other healing modalities?
Okay. In 92. She passed in 92. I think it was. A friend of mine said, you know what? Because she was a good friend of mine during that whole, Betty passing. She said, have you ever heard of Religious Science Church, Science of Mind? I think you would really, really relate to this and like it, and might be a great support system for you. So I went to one that she liked and it didn't resonate with me, but then somebody else told me about another one. So anyway, I went to that, walked in the door. It was that same sense of like, I'm home, and just instantly fell in love with the principles and everything there. And it was my complete support system. And by the way, I changed therapists a couple of times too during that whole process. It wasn't the same person, but that was the beginning of my awakening, my spiritual path. It was the first time that something made sense for me, that I really got it. It wasn't God is a white guy in the sky and, you know, all the crap that we get from Southern Methodist, which is what I was kind of raised. So I loved it. And that really, really helped a lot too. And then all the years of therapy and work that I did. And then in 2006, wow, I went to Peru and worked with shamans down there for a month. And I really think that was the last piece of my healing around my dad and all that with men. The ayahuasca medicine that I did and Wachuma really just blew open the rest of that. I don't know if you know anything about. Okay. You know, I just purged and all that ugliness came out. And I came back from that. And then Wachuma just felt like it put me all back together. And then in that same time, there was a group of men there. One of my very close friends was on that trip as well. And she said to the guys, just surround her and like hold her standing up. And I started to freak out. And they just kind of came around me and stood, and it was like rocking me. And I just let go. I just, you know, everything just melted. Like, they're not gonna hurt, you know, no male is gonna hurt me again. I just got this whole sense of like, this is never gonna happen again. Yeah. It was the most beautiful, amazing healing that anyone could have ever. And how she even thought of that, I have no idea. You know, just that magic that happens. And and then Mama Sita, who's my guide, said to me right then, something like, "You're never going to be hurt again, or they will never harm you." And then she also said to me, at another point in that trip, we were at a temple called Shavin, and there's a black pillar and there's a white pillar. And she told me to go, the black pillar was the male side. And she said, go towards that side. All the women were going over here and all the men were going over here. And she said, go towards that side. And I was sort of this hesitation. And she said, you're worried that you will become like them, like abusers. And she said, you will never be them. You could never do that. That is not who you are. And that was a real healing moment. And that might have been part of why I didn't want kids. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, but that certainly could be part of it. You know, that they're like a subconscious fear that.
So what do you think? Well, I mean, it's obvious. You already answered my question, but I was going to ask, how can these alternative therapies or modalities help people like you, where traditional therapy maybe brings you so far, and then what is that combination, or what was that combination for you?
That's a great question. The last therapist I worked with was phenomenal. Nancy Hay, by the way, in Mesa, Arizona. I had some good ones along the way, but again, I walked into her office and I was like, oh my God, this woman's got my number. You know, she knows what she's doing. But there were other things I did along the way, like breath work, I think is one of the best things ever to help you get to that really raw place. I don't even know how to explain what it does. It trances you out. You go into this alternative reality almost, where you can access that deeper emotion that for me, I would have been too afraid to access in a normal space. And I did it with a group of people that I didn't know, but they make it so safe. They create that you said container. That's a great word. They create that safe container for you, and you can scream, you can do whatever you need to do. Psychodrama was the same way. We could really do that. So these people are trained to help you access those raw places, that core that you can't get to on your own. And traditional therapy, they're not even trained to do that. Some of them are. I don't want to say that they all aren't. Nancy was using what's that thing called? EM. It's
emotional freedom technique.
Yes. And that was amazing for me. So if somebody's really good and they've done the extra training and they really know what they're doing, they can get you through a lot of that. But there are just certain techniques that alternative practitioners know, that have gotten special training in, that can really help you to access deeper levels that traditional therapists, and with all the limitations on them now, and what whoever controls them says they can and cannot do, they can't go there.
So how did you move from student to teacher?
Okay, in religious science, again, I'm one of those people that I kind of dive in. So within about 3 years of being in religious science, I took the practitioner training there and became a religious science practitioner. That's a 4-year study program. And you basically become a spiritual counselor. Then you can teach classes. You can do, we call it treatment work. So that's like prayer work that you're working with people on, emotional healing, physical healing, any kind of healing work that they want to do. So I was already doing that before I moved up here. I was a realtor, but I was teaching and, doing counseling for people and working with people. When I moved in, I came back from Peru. When I came back from Peru, there was a voice in my head, Mamacita, my guide. I thought I'd lost my mind for a while. It's like, okay, there's this voice in my head. Why is she still here? And I told a few friends that I knew I could trust that were woo-woo, and they would say, oh, let's talk to her. Let's ask her questions. So I started just kind of, doing little readings for people. And then one night, this friend called me who had little spiritual groups at her house, and she said, person who's supposed to talk tonight can't be here. We were having a big storm. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I have all these people coming. And I said, well, maybe Mamacita is supposed to come out of the closet tonight. So I went over that. I said, it's got to be safe. I'll come over and I'll do a reading for everybody. So I did, and Mamacita loved it. She loves groups. So we did like 11 people that night, and it was phenomenal. So then in 2008, she told me to move to Sedona. I was a very successful realtor in Scottsdale. I had all the trappings, all the stuff, and I was like, oh, and I'm single. Move to Sedona? I mean, I love Sedona. I vacationed up here. I would usually spend at least a week up here every year and come up on the weekends and rent cabins. And, I was up here a lot. Moved to Sedona? I was pretty sure I wasn't doing real estate anymore, but I didn't think I was going to move to Sedona. So I said, what do you want me to do in Sedona? And she just kept saying, move to Sedona. And I knew it was right. She had told me before, she had tested me before that on some other things, and I had said no, and we had been through that little game. But this time I knew it was right. 5 months later, I was in Sedona. I had sold my business, sold my house, everything, and I was here. And so, I moved my furniture, but I was here. Oh, okay. And then she told me to date men. I was like, my friends in Scottsdale were like, what Kool-Aid did you drink? You went to the jungle, you worked with these whatever, and what did you drink down there? Because you're moving to Sedona, you've sold your business, what the hell's going on? And now you're going to date men? Okay. And I was kind of feeling the same way. I'm like, really? 4 months later, I met Andre, who is now the love of my life. Well, you met him briefly, but he's amazing. And 11 weeks later, we were married. And I asked him to marry me.
Oh my God.
And I have never been happier in my life.
Wow.
So I spent about a year meditating, asking, praying, what do you want me to do? And I knew I would still do spiritual counseling. I was very clear on that. I knew I wanted to do women's retreats, but I didn't think I was going to start hanging out a shingle and do readings. I didn't think I would do that professionally. But I did. She said, go do readings. And I just trusted. I just trusted the process. I just really gave it all over and trusted everything. And do I make as much money as I used to make? No. Does it matter? No. Do I miss any of that? No. Not one thing. In fact, Andre loves to go to Scottsdale. I get down there, I'm like, can we go home? He loves to shop. He's the shopper in the family. I could care less. So it's so funny now.
Yeah. I feel that way too, right? Because I lived in Scottsdale for a little while, just temporarily, and so it feels totally different up here.
Yeah.
I although I don't know Andre at all, I have only seen you and him together once, and it was kind of a situation that warranted it. But what really struck me was how, because you're a very strong person. But what I witnessed was you, like, how much he holds you, and how you allow yourself to just kind of melt into his support. That was like, even in the 5 minutes that I was with the two of you, I could see that. And that is incredible, that he is the kind of person that is that trustworthy. Right. And then 2, that you have healed so much that you can melt into that.
And that was the key. And by the way, I specifically spent those 2 years after Peru. I was in a relationship when I went to Peru, but that ended very quickly after I came back with a woman. Peru, with the woman, and I knew that that was clearly done. But then I intentionally stayed single because I knew I had to do my work. Because all of a sudden I went, what's the common denominator here? Oh, whoops, right here. Because it was always about them, well, this one's a druggie, this one's this one abused me, this one. I mean, it was always something about them. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, who chose them? And I married myself. That's this ring. Mm-hmm. I did a whole ceremony around it. And I knew that I really had to love me. That I had to love me so completely that I didn't need anybody for anything. Nothing. That if somebody was there, that was wonderful, but that there was no need for anything.
Yeah. Where did you get the idea to have a ceremony mirroring yourself? Because I think that's so genius. It's like, it's elevating it to where it really deserves to be.
Right.
How did you get that idea?
I don't know. It just came. And then what was really funny was my best friend at the time told me that she had done the same thing, but she had never told me. She had never ever told me. She said, I mentioned it and nobody ever, I wanted you guys to come and be with me, but nobody ever. And I said, you never said that to me. She's like, I did. And I was like, wow, I never heard that, because I would have been there for you. She was married to my other good friend, but anyway.
Yeah.
I have, so maybe I did partly hear it. And anyway, I don't know. I knew that I had to do that. And somehow I knew that I had to give it that sort of, what did you say? Elevation?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That it had to be that.
So what, I think this is my final question, but who knows? So what, given that you got to that level of healing where you married yourself and loved yourself enough to commit to yourself in that way forever, how does that enable you to be in this relationship, and how does that differ from relationships where you didn't have that level of self-love?
Wow, so different. There is a complete independence. Trust is probably the absolute best word, actually. Yeah. Trust is, and I actually know what love is now. I never knew what love was. I always thought I knew what love was, but it was addiction. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was addiction to pain, actually.
Wow, I mean, that's like big can of worms there. Yeah, that relationships can be that place where you are addicted to suffering.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that who have been on that particular treadmill.
Yeah. I think
many of us.
Oh, yeah. I think 70-80% of Americans, I don't know about the rest of the world, but are addicted to pain.
Yeah. And it doesn't really have anything to do with the other person.
No.
It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with how you honor yourself and how you care for yourself. Thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's really beautiful gift to people.
Thank you for asking.
How do you define happiness?
How do I define happiness? Oh gosh, it's my whole life. How do I define happiness?
What do you mean it's your whole life?
Well, I'm just happy. Freedom. Happiness is freedom. I am so free now. This is one of the things I love the most about Andre. The very first time that I went out hiking, I love to hike alone because it's my meditation, and running a wellness center and being with people all week. And so it's just my alone time. We both need a lot of alone time, which is a real gift. But I came home and I said, I'll be gone a couple of hours. And it was 4 hours later. And I walked in and he was doing whatever. And I said, were you worried about me? And he said, no, why would I be worried about you? I had never been with anybody in my life that would not have been worried about me. So we are not, now if it had been 9 o'clock at night, obviously he would have been, okay, now it's dark. But he doesn't, we don't worry, we don't do that like, so for me, I have to be free to exist as myself. I have to be able to be autonomous in whatever I'm doing.
I think that's the worrying is an interesting thing, because I think what's actually inside of that worry in an unhealthy situation is that the other person is not worried necessarily about you. They're worried about what's going to happen to them without you.
Exactly.
Or if something happens to you, what they're going to go through.
Exactly.
And the only reason I know this is because I have children.
Right.
And I know that this is what is behind the worry.
Sure.
It's like, because I trust that their path is directed by their highest self in collusion with God, and it's all good. It's been what they agreed to. So I'm not worried about them.
Right.
I'm worried about me.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to me if
Of
something
course.
happens? And that is like the definition of codependency.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I've really been working with that, and I'm getting lots of opportunities.
Yeah. but that, yeah, and that's exactly what happens when you marry yourself. Then you don't have to have that worry anymore, because it's not that
Because you're going to be okay.
Exactly.
You got it.
If he died tomorrow, I'd hurt, and my heart would be hurting and aching, but I would be okay. You know, I'm gonna live.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's big. Okay, so number 2, how tech savvy are you?
Oh gosh, maybe I'm okay. I'm not great. You know, what's that program? I can do most things. I just learned Excel. I've been doing payroll on paper for 20 people.
Oh my God, that's funny.
But I love it, actually. It's so funny because people are like, she's doing payroll, stay away from her. I actually love it. Don't tell them. It's fun. Math is fun for me. I don't mind it at all. But I know I could do it a lot faster on Excel, so I started doing that on Excel, but I really hate it. But there's a couple of like design programs. Oh, they just fight me. I just don't get the whole design programs, those layers, and I don't know if you're a design person.
Not a computer design person. No,
I can't do them.
Yeah, the way I feel about it is that I know I can do it if I relax into it, and I don't get all agitated about it and like have the mental loop running that I can't do it. What do you feel ties all human beings together?
Energy. We're all energy.
That was not expected. Okay, so can you tell me a little bit more about that? How does that work, or how
it ties us all together? Yeah. We're all one. We're all the same thing. We're the same as everything. This is a basic religious science principle, by the way. Everything is just energy. So this is the same as us. The molecules just go together differently. I can bend a spoon like that, like a pigtail.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's just energy. So if we could really get that we are all the same, that there is no difference between us, there wouldn't be any of these issues. But we all are trained, again, everyone is trained that they're over the, you know, them and us. Yeah. They're different and they're not okay.
Separation.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like the original wound to me.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Who has influenced your life the most?
Probably my dad. You know, because if he hadn't done what he did, I wouldn't be who I am. As bad as that was, it was also good because I came out of that helping other people. So, and then once I found out what had happened to him and understood that, it's got to stop here. But my mom too, because she was, you know, she was so, I can do it. But yeah, I would say him. Yeah. Yeah. And somebody, I forget if it was a therapist or who it was that said this to me. I think it might have been Ann Albers, my mentor. Anyway, they said, imagine the courage that it took for him to come and be your father and do that to you. That was so huge. Yeah. Because remember I said he adored me, because he did. So how do you do that?
Yeah. the catalysts. I know I thought that way too, that would be a far darker role than the one I chose, you know. And I also believe that I've had lifetimes where I was a dark figure.
Yeah,
and so I have memories of that.
Right.
So it's very easy for me not to be in judgment of people, because I need that for myself, you know. So yeah, that's incredible. That's really incredible teaching. Okay, final question. What are you feeling hopeful about?
Okay, I'll just make this fun. Number one, that my husband outlives me, and my cat too. That's probably not going to happen, but please let Spencer outlive me. I have the best cat in the whole world right now. And that the aliens will save us.
What am I feeling most hopeful about? I am feeling most hopeful about...
That's my question.
Oh, no, that's cheating. I'm feeling most hopeful about humanity, really, honestly, that its purpose has been so beautiful. And I'm talking about all of it, you know, that we have come to this beautiful planet to do something amazing that is often beyond our grasp. But here we are doing it. Like, the amount of courage that it takes to be a human is, yeah. And I feel like we can accomplish anything. So those are my questions for you. Did you bring a question for me?
I'm going to make one up right now.
Okay.
You know, I actually started to say humanity first, and then I said, oh, I'll just make this fun. I really believe that. I really believe that at the core, most people are good. And I think that even when, you know, we look at people and we think, oh, that's evil or whatever, somewhere there is still a core, a light that's never been harmed. And if we can get to that, you know, that's redeemable. There's, I don't know, and maybe it's just naivety. I just want to believe that we're good. So we're on that same path. What's my question to you? Okay, what's your favorite color and why?
Well, right now, I'm like going crazy over green. I have, like, there's so much green in my life right now, and everything that I just painted my kitchen green. I painted the walls green. I've been buying plants like mad. I bought a green car, and I'm just all about green right now. It feels so good to me.
What is it about green?
I have been told that it's because you're not getting enough greens in your diet, but I actually do.
That's an easy fix.
Yeah.
You can eat greens.
So I don't know. I think it possibly has something to do with the plants, because I'm plant crazy, and I think that you know, I'm a nurturer by nature, and so now that my children are grown, I think I just like. I don't have a pet right now, so it's like I just transfer the love to the plants, and I really love my plants. And so maybe it has something to do with that. But the green feels so life affirming to me. It's like, it means life to me. And I'm just like in that stage where I'm just like embracing this wild and crazy ride. Well, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story with us and for spending the time with me today.